What if you're not lazy? In fact, what if the reason why you've struggled with motivation, with discipline, with achieving your goals so you can live an amazing life has nothing to do with willpower? My guest today spent over the last 50 years studying this human behavior factor that affects the quality of your life. And in this conversation, we break down and go deep on your values, or your purpose, your goal setting, how to achieve success, and how to live a life that is full of meaning. Guys, this is one where you want to listen to more than once, and I hope you enjoy the episode with Dr. John Demartini. Welcome to the Practice Speed podcast. Today's guest, he does not need any introduction unless you've been living under the rock. Dr. John Demartini, thank you so much, sir, for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I was looking forward to this. Thank you.
Okay, so John, I know you've done probably thousands of these, and I was thinking, how do we make it different? And it's difficult to do that when you've written so many books and articles and you've appeared on shows and podcasts. But just our background is we're here in the UK, we have clinics, and our audience is chiropractors and business owners specifically. So I thought the theme of today would be, cracking this code of human motivation. And who else to speak to but yourself? But before we do that, I'm very curious about John when he was 5, 6, 7, maybe up to 15. If you don't mind sharing with the audience the story that you came from.
I was born in 1954, Houston, Texas. About a year and a half in, I was going to a speech pathologist because I wasn't making sounds properly. I had to wear a brace on my left arm and leg because I had a internally rotated arm and leg.
Do you remember that? Is that, obviously you're
I
quite
do.
young.
I remember going to literally the doctor's office a few years ago. I was in Houston and I actually went to the same building and tried to find the same office. They've remodeled some of it, but I tried to go there because I remember going into the elevators in the building when I was very young. I also remember wearing the braces, so that I definitely remember. When I was 7, well, when I was 5, going on 6, I was in kindergarten class, and I had a teacher, Mrs. Farmer. And for some reason, I liked to draw with the girls. I didn't like to draw with the boys. The boys were drawing cars and army stuff. The girls are drawing trees and flowers and houses and stuff. For some reason, I was more interested in hanging out with the girls, maybe that Italian blood. I don't know what it was. So the teacher said, if you're not going to play with the boys, I'm not going to let you play with the girls. You're going to sit by the center and play by yourself. And I think that that was part of the perfection because it put me in the middle path
Interesting.
between the pairs. The speech impediment made me curious about how to communicate. When I got to first grade, my first grade teacher told me that in front of my parents, because I went from normal reading to remedial reading to wearing a dunce cap. That's what they wore in those days, 1950s, 60. So I was told by my first grade teacher, Mrs. McLaughlin, that to my parents, I'm afraid your son will never be able to read, never be able to write, never be able to communicate effectively, probably not go very far, amount to much. So I didn't see any reason not to believe her. And so I only made it through school with the help of the kids that were smart, and I would ask them questions. I'm known for my questions still to this day because I used to ask questions to get information out of people, the smart kids. And I kind of made it through school until 6th grade that way. My parents moved from Houston, Texas to Richmond, Texas at that time at 12. And there weren't a lot of smart kids in that particular class.
Uh-oh.
It was a lower socioeconomic area in the country, a town of 9,000 people, and it was just wasn't the most economically viable. And I didn't have kids to ask questions to, and so I ended up leaving home and dropping out. I left home at 13, and I dropped out of school shortly after, and wanted to go surfing. Texas wasn't the surf capital.
Why
There
is
was
it?
surfing
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Why surfing and where did that come from?
At 9 years old, my parents took me with my cousins to Freeport, Texas. And for some reason, they got a surfboard, and I could stand up on a surfboard the first day. And I just had the skill of balancing on a surfboard, which was bizarre. But I wanted to go surfing. So from 13, I left home. I just kind of lived on the streets and lived in a bowling alley in the back of a restaurant. And in those days, they didn't even lock cars. You could just get into a car and sleep at night. And then I moved to the beach and I lived on the beach. Then I hitchhiked to California when I was 14 and down all the way into Mexico to surf. At 15, I panhandled enough money to make it to Hawaii. And I lived under a bridge and then under a park bench and then in a bathroom and then an abandoned car. And I just kept social climbing. And I just wanted to ride big waves. And I was blessed to be able to surf with some of the great surfers there. And I got to ride 40-foot waves back then. Now they surf 100-foot waves. But and I got in some surf movies and surf books and surf magazines and stuff. And I was kind of a long-haired hippie surfer guy. And one day I was surfing at Lani Kea, a big Lani Kea day, and my diaphragm stopped. I couldn't get any air. And I went over the falls on the surf, and my board was crunched and splintered, and I made it to the beach, and I went unconscious.
Whoa.
And for 3.5 days, I was unconscious. And I had cyanide strychnine poisoning without realizing it from some things I was eating. I didn't realize it. And in the recovery of that, that led me to a little health food store and then a yoga class at Waimea Bay at the Sunset Recreation Hall. And that night, there was a guest speaker, Paul C. Bragg, who inspired me to believe that maybe I could someday become intelligent and properly speak and articulate. And that was a turning point that night.
How
That
does
one gentleman is the one that inspired me to do what I'm doing to this day.
Mr. Paul Bragg? Wow. But how does one conversation, 1 hour of someone's time, one mentor changes the trajectory of someone's life?
Well, that's been my dream since then, to try to do that with as many people as I could. But I believe that his certitude, his clarity, his certitude, and his achievements. I mean, this guy was amazing. He was into health and fitness and longevity, and then
And
helped open up
fasting, is
like a
that right? He had some like fasting
fasting. He
protocols.
helped open up like 1,000 health food stores and help the entire health movement in America. Jack LaLanne, who used to be on TV every day, was a byproduct of him. And he impacts Steve Jobs and Donald Trump and
Wow.
myself and many people, Gloria Swanson. I mean, there's just there's 39, I think, really noted people that he influenced. And that night, I was taken through a guided imagery meditation, and I saw a vision of what I wanted to do. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I saw myself standing on a balcony in front of 1 million people speaking in my mind's eye. And I just said, I want to be able to share and inspire like this man. And so I started working on it. I started on the journey. But because I had a health problem, particularly a neuromuscular health problem because of the strychnine, I wanted to know about health and I wanted to study universal laws as it relates to health, philosophy, and teaching. That's what led me to chiropractic
How old were you when you
because
when you when you applied?
I was 17 when I met him. And my parents, I was living in Hawaii, and when I was 18, I ended up flying to LA and hitchhiking back to Texas. The guy I used to live in a tent with, I just had lunch with, well, no, pardon me, dinner with just the other night in Los Angeles, 55 years later.
Life is
So
a
it's quite
crazy
interesting.
miracle.
Yeah, amazing. So I hitchhike back to Texas. I take a GED, high school equivalency, and somehow miraculously pass this thing. And I tried to go back to school and I failed. And I got a 27 on a test. I needed a 72 to pass. And I was really distraught. And I thought, well, maybe this is a delusion, that I'm going to become intelligent and I'm going to be able to read and write and stuff. So I was crying. When I got home, I cried in the living room floor. And my mom came home from shopping and she said, what happened, son? I said, I blew the test. I guess I will never be able to read, write, communicate, never amount of thing, never go very far in life. I repeated the first grade teacher's thing because that was the program. And my mom said something to me that was very inspiring. She said, son, whether you become a great teacher, healer, and philosopher, like you dream, like you've been telling us, whether you return to Hawaii and ride giant waves like you've done, or return to the streets and panhandle as a bum, I just want to let you know that your father and I are going to love you no matter what.
Oh,
And when she said that, my hand went into this fist, kind of like the fist of determination. And I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called studying, reading, and learning. I'm going to master this thing called teaching, healing, and philosophy. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to travel whatever distance. I'm going to pay whatever price. Give my source of love across this planet. And I got up. I hugged my mom. I thanked her. I went into my room. I got a dictionary out, a Funk and Wagnalls dictionary, which I still have in my office in Houston. Same one. And I made a commitment to memorizing 30 words a day alphabetically through that dictionary. And I recited them 20 times. I wrote them out 20 times. I put them in a sentence 20 times. I pronounced them 20 times, all 30 words. So I redid this like 600 repetitions or more. And at the end of the day, my mom used to test me on those words so I could pronounce them, put them, and make sure I had a meaning to them. When you have dyslexia, that's not an easy thing. So I just practiced it, and I did not stop. I just was on a relentless pursuit to overcome this issue. And 20,000 words later, a couple of years later, I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class. And during that time, students at school started to ask me questions, and I started mentoring and teaching classes at the thing. And one of those students is still a student.
amazing.
So I by the time I couldn't go to a university at first. I had to go to a junior college with a GED. But within 2 years, I graduated at the top from that little associate's degree, they called it. And I went on to University of Houston to get a bachelor's degree. And there, under the trees every day, I started giving classes. And we'd have 100, 125, 150, sometimes 400 people every day under the trees with dialogue. I was doing presentations, whatever I was learning. And I was just absolutely reading and devouring books. I mean, I was speed reading by that time. I was learning how to speed read. And I taught classes where I taught now, the Bauer School of Entrepreneurship sits.
Wow.
And I didn't know it, but I was partly responsible for that school. And they asked me to speak at the opening of that school. And I told them that this is the spot I used to teach.
That's where it started from.
Yeah. So I went on then to professional school, chiropractic college. So I had nearly 10 years of college by the time I finished that. And I taught every single night. I mean, I had classes every night in my apartment. That's how I paid for school. I was generating like $100,000 a year teaching in my apartment every night. I made, I have 35 people coming in. They pay me $20, and I made, pretty good money. And I was giving classes, and I had a following there. And when I got out of school, I opened up my little 970 square foot little office in the strip center. And 18 months, I started doing classes every night, same thing. I didn't stop. It didn't go well with my girlfriend and later my wife at first, but I did it. But within 18 months, my business grew from myself and one assistant to 5 doctors, 12 staff members, and 5,000 square foot office. And that's when Parker asked me to come and speak to the Parker seminars to share ideas. And then all the consulting groups, I got to share with them, and it just expanded. Now I've gotten to speak in 174 countries to millions and millions of people. And it just goes to show that if you never give up on something and just keep methodically plugging away at it, a guy that could barely walk and couldn't speak can become a traveling educator. So I've been blessed.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope people are listening because I think there is a lot of people that are stuck. A lot of people have maybe victim mentality because of whatever reason. And I think when you put people in the same room as someone who's achieved incredible things, but 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, it was impossible as a perception, then it just I call it breaking the frame. It just shows them that there are things that are possible. I come from Bulgaria. I had zero English, and mum and dad migrated here to the UK. And I remember every single day I would write the words I learned 100 times on a piece of paper.
Exactly.
And it just relates so much to what you're saying, and it's phenomenal. But the real lesson for me was maybe a little bit deeper when you was telling me that story. Would you say the relationship you had with mum and dad was healthy, unhealthy? Were they supportive? It sounds like they let you do whatever you wanted.
Well, I had it's interesting. My sister and I had two different views about my parents. She stayed at home. I left.
By the way, on my side, that's a really selfish question because we have a 4-year-old son and we're just about to have a second baby. And I always worry about how do you parent? No one gives you the playbook.
Well, did they survive? I guess if they survived, they were you did it.
So far, we're
But
doing well.
um, I really thought my parents were extraordinary. I didn't have any problems with them. I didn't have I mean, I think I have one memory of a conflict with my dad one time. And it's because I had a girlfriend meeting me at a friend's house, and I was going to be able to kiss her that night. And my dad said, "You need to stay home tonight." And I said, "No, I'm going into town." And I used to ride a bicycle 13 miles to go into town or hitchhike. And he said, "No, you need to stay home tonight." And I was not going to stay home on that night because my best friend had his parents out of town, and he had the house, and he had his girlfriend. I had my girlfriend meeting me there, and we were going to kiss. It's one of those when you're 12, 13 years old, you just kiss for like an hour nonstop kind of thing. An esophageal microbiome evaluation. So,
For the chiropractors out there.
so I had a fight with him that night, and he told me that if you're going to go into town, then you're claiming that you're a man and you're able to do it on your own, so you'll be on your own now. And so I took it. I went, okay. That's why I left at 13. Not because I had any problems with my dad. He was a pretty cool guy. My mom just go, "What's going down here tonight?" But I took it
Interesting.
on. And my dad really trained me at a young age. He'd prepared me for the world because he saw that I had learning problems. And so when I was 9, I told him I wanted to buy a baseball and a glove and a bat. And he said, "Have you mowed the yard? Have you edged the sidewalk? And you sweep the garage? Have you done all the chores?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, then you're going to have to go to the neighbors and see what you can do there and become resourceful." So I started going to the neighbors, and I trimmed this yard and mowed it, but I used the equipment in the garage. Dad, well, for that. So he turned me money for use of equipment, and I worked. So when I was 9, I eventually had 9 students, 9 kids in the neighborhood working for me, 3 groups of 3 and helping me do all the yards. And so I made 45 bucks after all my costs, paying my dad, paying for gas. I made 45 bucks in a day on some good days. And my dad said, "Well, you need to save some of that. You just keep buying it. If you buy immediate gratification, you'll never get ahead financially." So he taught me how to save. He got me this little blue folding coin collection sets and a piggy bank, which I still have in my office today with the original coins that's never been opened. And so I have a small fortune sitting in this big piggy bank sitting in my drawer in Houston as a reminder to think long term, because that's like 60 something years now, 63 years of saving. And so he taught me how to do those things and made me accountable and charged me $750 a week to live at home. And I had to pay for clothing, food, and rent. And he says, because this is the real world and you got to be prepared for the real world. and you need to be resourceful. So when I told them I was going to go to California and to Hawaii to serve, they dropped me off on the freeway to hitchhike to California, and said, "Go live your dream, boy."
Wow. Okay, that's so interesting.
So that's a lot of parents, hey, they got a lot of slack from the other family families. They said, well, you can't just drop your kid off. And they said, no, my son, I've trained him on how to be resourceful. Now, I always found a way of being resourceful. When I was in Huntington Beach, California, there were thousands of girls on the beach, and I'd go up there and then bum quarters from them. I did pretty good. And I did odd jobs. I worked in a little Hell Jack surf shop, and I figured out how to do things. And when I went to Hawaii, I got resourceful, and I figured out how to survive there. And but I just wanted to surf at the time. So my parents were really cool. My mom was sort of a mystic and an artist. My dad was an engineer that owned a plumbing business. They were kind of middle class, and trying to climb a little bit towards upper middle class,
Mm.
as they got older. And but they didn't rescue me per se. They made me accountable, which I'm really grateful for. When I went on to school, they were very inspired that I was going to try to go back to school. They helped me with some schooling costs. They helped me with, giving me job. I worked at my dad's plumbing business to help pay for school, but they didn't rescue me. But my sister, they were a little bit more, because I guess in those days, a girl was different than a boy. And so she got rescued a bit and became a little bit more dependent and less resourceful, I think, because they figured, well, she'll marry a guy and the guy will take care of her because that was the era. But
Yeah.
but she had a different story about the whole thing. I really believe that giving people accountability, it helps them. It doesn't hurt them. And they thought today that would be child abuse.
It's interesting. It's exactly why I'm asking because my wife comes from a family where she had to do chores, she was paid for some tasks. Because mom and dad were migrants, they wanted me to have everything, even though we had nothing. But also, my parents instilled their idea that anything is possible. My dad was quite strict, mom is quite sort of creative, and you do whatever you want. And I just always, when I meet people like you, I have to ask the question of how was your, because you've achieved something incredible that not many people have achieved. And I think these early years really shaped the leader you are today. And I always like have this debate in my head, how much of it is nurture, how much of it is nature, how much of it is it conditioning versus circumstances versus DNA. Tough questions to answer, I guess.
Well, my dad believed in the formative years. There was a Nobel Prize given for people on the idea of formative years in childhood. And I remember him saying once, I think I was 7, he said, by the time you're 7, your basics are in place. And that has an impact. And we call that now parental attachment theory. But the way they were raised sometimes has an impact on your life. I learned when I was 14, when I hitchhiked to California. I lived with a 32-year-old that summer, a woman, and then a 27-year-old. So I dated older women. And I realized that as I was on the road, why I was dating older women is because they were halfway between my mom and my girlfriend's age. And they were playing a girlfriend role and a mom role. And so I realized at 14, nothing was missing. The master lives in a world of transformation, but never the illusions of gain and loss. And so I really kind of trusted the universe on how and who emerged, how people emerged and who emerged in my life for the next step of my journey. And I met amazing people and got to do pretty amazing things living as a street kid and a surfer. I mean, I got mentored I met Howard Hughes, I met Timothy Leary, I met B.B. King and Buddy Miles, living on the streets, and met all these surfers. And, so I had some really amazing experiences being at the right place at the right time to hear the right thing that I think that some people go the kind of the normal route may not get the opportunity to do. So I don't, people ask me recently, do you have any regrets? I said, no, I have no regrets. Why would I have regret? where's the error in the whole pathway? There's no mistakes there. Anything you're not grateful for is baggage. Anything you're grateful for is fuel. So I don't look back and go, oh, I wish this had happened, or my parents should have done that. I don't have any of those things. I don't even grasp that concept. I'm a firm believer that no matter what happens, it's part of the perfection of what's going on in your journey. And
Oh,
if you ask quality questions, how is whatever's happening helping me get what I want? Amazing things happen because you now see it all on the way, not in the way. And it makes you way more grateful. I was born on Thanksgiving Day. My mom told me to be grateful for what I've got because if I do, I'll get more to be grateful for. And I found that to be quite true. I have the largest collection of documented gratitudes, nearly 10,000 pages of anybody I've met. So
wow.
I'm a firm believer. I do it every day. I've already got you listed on here. Believe it or
Oh,
not,
that's amazing.
I've already got you listed. I'll see if I can find it here. Let's see if is there a way I can share? Let's see. Is there a share on here? I don't.
I believe there is.
Yeah, I can share, I think. Let's see if I can.
The viewers should be able to see
Can you
there.
see it there? I don't know.
Yes, yes, there is a Google
I
Doc.
had the opportunity to be interviewed by Stefan Gaspardov, host of Practice Peak podcast on the topic of how to build a successful practice or live your own terms is what I assumed it was. And
That's
so I've
amazing.
already got it in there. I've already put you in that. You're in my book.
Oh, wow.
Um,
And they say,
I keep a record every single day of all the great opportunities, the people I get to meet. I've met literally over 2,000 global people. And I keep records of that. I keep records of all the places I go in, all the consulting I've done, all the speaking. I've got every city I've spoken in. It's over 3,000 cities I've spoken. I've got it all documented, every country. You know, I keep records of everything. I'm a metric guy because if you have a goal that's meaningful, why not monitor to see how you're doing on it and to keep records of your progress? So I've got a record of everything that I've set out as a goal, and I monitor it every single day. I'm a very, very much that way.
this is so amazing because I think a lot of people are believers that some people just are lucky and success just happens. And I was reading something the other day where it was talking about how in the brain, chemically, it's impossible to feel anxious and grateful at the same time. We gratitude, and I typically write down three things I'm grateful for every single day. And this is definitely going to be on one of my lists. But you did mention something about the quality of the questions. The quality of the questions determine the quality of your life or the quality of the questions you ask. I have to ask the obvious, John. How do we ask better questions?
Well, that's been a very strong focus of mine since I was a kid. Because if you ask the right questions, you got information, and that allowed you to get through school. But if you are infatuated with something or someone, and you're conscious of the upsides and unconscious of the downsides, or resentful to somebody and conscious of the downsides and unconscious of the upsides, you have a distorted, skewed, polarized, dramatized interpretation of reality. And you'll create with your amygdala's response an assignment of valency, positive or negative valency into the hippocampus and create an episodic memory that you will store in your brain as something to seek as an impulse or something to avoid with an instinct, a prey or predator response. And that's a survival response, not a thrival response. So anytime you are polarized in your perceptions, you're missing information. Claude Shannon in information theory and the guys from MIT who created it stated that disorder means missing information. And so anytime you have an unconscious portion and you're missing information, a quality question is one that returns it back. So a quality question, see, a question makes you conscious of what you're unconscious of, makes you think and see in things that you don't see. So a quality question is one that equilibrates the mind and brings equanimity to the mind. And it's neither excess nor deficient in awareness. So if you're infatuated and you're blind to the downsides, the quality question is, what are the downsides of this person that I'm infatuated with, that I'm overlooking? I mean, when you date somebody and you're highly infatuated, at first you're blind, you're ignorant, you're unconscious, you're in the dark, you're not enlightened. You only see one side of them, and you have an impulse and you want to eat them because they're prey. But over the next weeks and months, what do you discover? That they have challenges and downsides that you didn't see initially. And they were a fatal attraction in a sense. So you end up discovering. So why have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process? Well, not have the wisdom of the ages without the aging process, by ask quality questions to make you aware of what you're going to be discovering in time. The same thing over things you resent. Sometimes you have this event you think is terrible. You meet this terrible person. But a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, you find out that there's a trajectory change that initiated, and that was a great blessing. So you, instead of waiting for time and having the aging process to come up with the other side of the equation, balance the equation by a quality question. What are the upsides? How is this meaningful? How is it helping me fulfill my mission? So I learned to ask questions that equilibrate the mind, to liberate me from the intrusive thoughts that occupy space and time in the mind when I'm polarized. So if you're highly infatuated, you can't sleep at night. You have insomnia because you're fantasizing. If you're highly resentful, you can't sleep at night because you're in a nightmare. So anytime you're highly polarized and you distort things and create a subjective bias, a false positive and false negative distortion, you automatically have these occupy space and time in your mind, and they run you. And therefore, you're now distracted by the external world that you're misinterpreting instead of being governed from within. The executive center, systems two thinking that Daniel Kahneman describes,
Prefrontal cortex.
governs, yeah, the prefrontal cortex governs those and moderates those and dampens those and brings those into equanimity. And it's designed for integration and authenticity. So if you ask quality questions, it awakens sustainable, fair exchange between you and others. Because if you put people on pedestals, you'll altruistically sacrifice for them. If you put them in pit, you'll narcissistically sacrifice them for you. But if you go into a state of equanimity and equity, you will communicate with maximum utility and sustainable, fair exchange where you maximize your potential and awareness in life. So asking quality questions liberates you from those skewed views into inspired views and allows you to maximize your real, true, authentic self. And the magnificence of your authentic self is far greater than all the fantasies you've imposed on yourself over time. So quality questions liberate you from the bondage of the misperceptions that you accumulate with your amygdala's survival response and allows you to live in a thrival action. And in the medial prefrontal cortex, when you bring it into equilibrium, that area lights up under functional MRIs, and that area has spontaneous action potentials where you spontaneously act. You don't need outside motivation. So we have a hierarchy of values in our life. Whenever we live by our highest values, we spontaneously are acting because we're inspired from within to act and fulfill it. As we go down the list of values, we require external motivation, reward and punishment. If you do it, I'll reward you. If you don't, I'll punish you. To do it. Those are inefficient compared to a spontaneously inspired action. That's why if you're not filling your day with high priority actions that inspire you spontaneously, your day fills up with low priority distractions. The distractions are the impulses and instincts that are occupying space and time in your mind and keeping you ineffectively inauthentic. So the quality of our life is based on the quality of the questions we ask. If we ask questions that liberate us from those impulses and instincts, and we get inspired into action, we accomplish most effectively and efficiently a meaningful, purposeful, teleological direction in life. And this is what creates leaders. The medial prefrontal cortex is the executive center because you're the executive now.
Wow. And I have to listen to this probably 3 times, but I hope the listener and people watching are making notes because the number of times I have done your values factor in the equation, and I have so many questions I want to ask you selfishly, but I will try to keep it useful for the listener. But how do I know if I'm setting my goals and I'm working towards my goals as opposed to living based on someone else's values? Because I think that also
Right.
creates lack of meaning
Whenever
in
you're
life.
whenever you're living by injected values, see, if you meet somebody and you put them on a pedestal, the way values work follows Coulomb's law in electronics, electrostatics. Anytime you put somebody above you and see them more positive than you, more intelligent, more successful, more wealthy, more stable in relationships, more socially savvy, more physically fit, more spiritually aware, anytime you look up to them by the law of contrast, you'll minimize yourself. And anytime you put them up and minimize you, you will inject some of their values into your life. Just like if you look down on them and put yourself up, you'll project your values onto them. When you inject the values of outer authorities, you'll hear yourself saying, I got to, I have to, I must, I should, I ought to, I supposed to, I'm supposed to, I need to. Those are called the imperatives. Anytime you hear that inside your head, I should, I ought to, that ain't you. That's an injected value called the superego by Freud by an outer authority. So if you have that and you have uncertainty because you now have friction because you've infatuated with them and minimized you, you're too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you. You have uncertainty. You're designed to have uncertainty when you're inauthentic, and you're only designed to have certainty when you're authentic. So when you're actually living by your highest value, you will have clarity. You will feel that it's a spontaneous action. You will feel that it's impossible for you not to fulfill it. You will automatically feel it's destined. The human will now matches what they used to call divine will inside you. You feel that you have human sovereignty and divine providence working in your behalf for an objective. And you don't have to ask the question. If you have to ask the question, it's not the clearest, highest value. When there's clarity, there's no question. And so I've been doing value determinations and value applications since 1978. I asked when I was in 1978, I started chiropractic college in August. And I asked, why do some people walk their talk and some people limp their life? Why do some people do what they say and others don't? Why do some people flourish and others flounder? And it boiled down to intrinsic versus extrinsic objectives and goals. Intrinsic values in the study of axiology are ones that are so the ones in spontaneous, so the highest core values. Extrinsic values are ones that have to be motivated from without. If you have to have a reminder, a motivator, an incentive to do something, it's not your highest value. I've been teaching, November will be 54 years. I don't ever have to be motivated to do what I do. You know, I'm sure you don't need to be motivated to do your podcast. It's a spontaneous thing. Every single day I'm teaching, researching, and writing. I don't go a day without it. So I've been doing that. And so when you're doing something you really are inspired to do and you love to do, and you've delegated lower priority things, that's where a lot of people falter. They're not delegating and they're trapping themselves in those injected values which self-depreciate and scatter and lower the vitality. But if they're doing the highest priority actions, that's if you ask yourself, what's the highest priority action I can do today to fulfill my mission on earth and keep to the highest priority? In my case, that's teaching. Second highest priority is researching and writing. The third one is traveling the world. That's why I full-time travel and live on a ship. So I basically consistently stick to those and delegate everything else out. I haven't cooked since I was 24. I haven't driven a car in 36 years. I've got administrations, people that take care of marketing. Everything else is delegated, so I can put total focus on teach, research, write, and travel. That's it. And my girlfriend says kiss.
Wow. I mean, this is so valuable for the listener because a lot of them are clinic owners and struggle so much because they think they have to do every single thing on the to-dos
Well, I
list.
did too. When I first opened up my clinic, I did everything. You know, I was working on Saturdays and doing things and answering telephones. I did whatever it took, you know, and I'm okay with that. But that's going to burn you out and bore you after a while if you're not doing the higher priority things. So I started learning delegation after reading The Time Trap by Ellen McKinsey. And I started delegating the heck out of it, and I never went back. So I haven't written a check since 1983. Don't even know what a checkbook or how the finance is done. I set all of my financial systems on automation. So every week, money goes into buying quality stocks. Every week, money goes into paying taxes. Every week, all the bills are automated. I don't have anything to do. It's electronically done. I was doing kind of a automation and robotic kind of stuff when I was back in the 80s. So I learned not to don't waste your time on anything but the highest priority action in your life, or otherwise you're going to devalue yourself. Because every time you do low priority things, you devalue yourself. Anytime you do high priority things, you value yourself, and so does the world. So I stick to what my core competence is, which is researching, writing, traveling, teaching, and I don't waste my time on the other things. I hire people that absolutely love to do that, that are engaged in doing that, they're experts in doing that, and surround myself. Because if I help other people get what they want to get in life, because they're doing what I would love them to do, I get to do what I'm love to do in life. And so many doctors, because I consulted with about 1,000 clinics in the 80s and early 90s in America and throughout Europe. I saw doctors doing it all and burning themselves and draining themselves and burning out on practice because they were doing it all instead of adjusting and speaking. That was it. When I was in practice, I was doing presentations to generate 100 new patients a month, and I was doing the actual adjusting on the highest priority, most influential people, and I delegated the other doctors to take everything else.
Do
I
you
learned a
remember?
long time delegate.
Do you remember the moment when you like left the table? Like when you said there are other things that I have to do in life, and you because I haven't read that part of your story about you leaving chiropractic or not being with patients anymore, left the clinic.
Well, I still adjust to people, even on my ship here.
Oh, okay, I
I
didn't
still
know
do
that.
so. Yeah, I still do a little bit of adjusting when people I see somebody that's got something that I can help. I just go for it. But I don't. It was 1990 or so. 1982 is when I opened my practice, October 12th. I hired an assistant, first assistant. I told her in 5 years I'll be traveling around the world teaching, and she said, "Okay, whatever." And by 1986, I moved into my high-rise office, which I still have an office there in Houston, on the 52nd floor there. And I was out teaching and doing consulting at that time because when I started the Parker seminar, they used to give feedback comments from the doctors after my speeches. And I realized that I was reaching more people by teaching, more chiropractic patients by teaching than I was in my office. I was seeing 100 new patients a month. So that would be what, 100 times a month? That's 1,200 a year times 40 years. That's 50,000 people. But if I go and I speak and I've got 1,000 doctors there and I can increase their practice 10%, and 10% of maybe 200 people in a week or something like that is 20 times 1,000. That's 20,000 people I'm doing just in the
Mhm.
speech. So we calculated, looking at all the clients and all the doctors we were working with, we calculated we were seeing 3 million people a year. And I was doing way more service for the chiropractic profession doing that. But then I realized that there was a limit. There was only a couple 100,000 chiropractors in the world. And I had a vision to go to every country on the earth and to teach and billions of people. So I just kept expanding it to other health professions, to businesses. I got to do consulting for about 1,000 corporations, and on top of that, I mean, it just kept expanding. So I just realized that the universe is my playground, the world is my home, every country is a room in the house, every city is a platform to share my heart and soul. That's why I live on a ship called the world, so I can circumnavigate the world and speak. I was in San Francisco and I spoke there this weekend, and I'm off to the next place, right? So I just keep moving around. So I'm a firm believer that the real you keeps expanding and has a desire for impact, to contribute. It's philanthropic. The false you is basically debaucherous and immediate gratifying. And so many people who are not prioritizing their life are missing out on the spontaneity and the calling of doing something that contributes to ever greater numbers of people.
What an adventure you've lived, and how many. I interviewed someone who had the biggest private sale of chiropractic offices in the world ever. I think they sold 160, 170 offices, private equity, and the biggest impact that they've had in their life was you. And that's 160 clinics, seeing thousands and thousands and thousands of thousands of patients. So yeah, you've had an incredible impact in the world.
One of when I was, I would say in the 90s, 93 or 4 or something like that, I contacted some of the chiropractic colleges, and ask them to identify where the students were coming from. And at that time, we had 400 students that entered into chiropractic college because of speaking. So my objective wasn't just patient numbers, but how many students I could inspire into chiropractic college at the time. And so a lot of them went to Texas, some went to Parker. A lot of them went to Parker because I was speaking at Parker. But I would speak at Northwest, I would speak at Canadian Memorial, and I was speaking at these colleges, and I was doing what I could to inspire people into it because that's really the measure. Not just that you did well, but that a tree that bears fruit builds a forest. So the question is how much of a forest did you build? And so that for a long time, I kept records of that, and I was inspired by that. And I'd sometimes even visit the school and meet with the doctors that were inspired by a talk. I'd get a letter from them. I'd listen to Parker. Parker. I decided I'm going to be a chiropractor. B.J. Hardick was one of the people that had such an influence. Now he's served hundreds of chiropractors, not thousands of chiropractors, and they've done the same thing. And he tells the same story, and it's a ripple effect. So giving yourself permission to be yourself in a world that doesn't want you to be, is really significant because you can't stand out fitting in. You stand out and make a difference by being yourself because you're unique. You have a unique hierarchy of values. And if you live congruently with that set of values and delegate lower priority things and dedicate to higher priority things, you become an unstoppable, incremental, and momentum individual that becomes a leader automatically. There's a leader sitting dormant in everyone. Most don't wake it up because they don't give themselves permission to live by their own authority and become the author of their destiny instead of subordinating to the outer authorities. I said on the movie The Secret 20 years ago, when the voice and the vision on the inside becomes louder than all opinions on the outside, you've begun to master your life.
Wow. And yeah, I've got so much to say. I actually probably one of the probably one of the biggest returns on investments in terms of my time, my quality of my life, people around me, was linking my goals to my values and really digging deep into like where I come from, what drives me, what feels like play, but other people find it hard. And it was life changing. So first of all, personally, I want to thank you. But you do talk about as well how I think I was 25, 26. They found this huge tumor outside my left lung, close to my heart, no symptoms or anything. I had thoracotomy, they had to break my ribs. I almost died. And I think it's one of the best things that happened to me because of how it led me to think about my health and teach people about health. But a lot of people could have taken the victim mentality and say, oh, my back is hurting. I don't have the sensation here. I'll never be able to play sport again. And you talk about changing perceptions. Can we expand on that concept based on the example I gave you?
You have control over three things in your life. Only three things: perceptions, decisions, actions. And most people don't even know that they're reacting and not even making decisions. But you have the capacity to do that. So if you're not prioritizing your actions, you're not going to maximize your potential in life. If you're not prioritizing your decisions and you're not prioritizing your perceptions, the way you prioritize your perception is ask, how is whatever I'm perceiving, how is it helping me fulfill what's highest on my value? That's one of the greatest questions a human being can ask. How is, no matter what happening in your life, how is it helping you fulfill your highest value? What is most meaningful, purposeful, and functional for you? And if you ask that, you see life on the way, not in the way. It now becomes momentum building. It's unstoppable. And so if you master those three things and take whatever happens and ask, how is it helping me fulfill my highest value? You're never a victim of history. You're a master of destiny. You don't see trauma. I've gotten to work with people in my Breakthrough Experience program with people that had been classified as the most traumatic experiences. A woman that was raped by 100 men in a motorcycle gang, uh, a man that was stabbed 18 times and left to run over on a highway. I mean, I've seen all kind of interesting things. Beating of a child and broken all the ribs and teeth. I've seen stuff that you just go, "Oh, this is like off the chart." I've never seen anything that the mortal body can experience that the mortal soul can't love. And I've had people with those situations. In 4 hours, the lady that had 100 men rape her, in front of a television crew in New Zealand, we had her in a state of grace, a state of thankfulness. She went on to write a book, become a leader of women, to empower women. So no matter what you've been through, let's use it to our advantage. She ended up getting married after 18 years of not being with a man. I mean, the whole thing was turned around because of perception. The quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask questions, it liberates you from the judgment of the valency. See, if you get highly valent and it's all positive and get an absolute morality that's all good or all bad, you're stuck. You're stuck. You're now in a dogma. But if you can see with relativism how to see the other side of the equation, you liberate yourself from being stuck. So I'm a firm believer that it's not what happens to you, it's how you decide to perceive it, decide and act from it. And I've had people been through the most horrendous stuff and turn it into something that's outrageously amazing with what they can do with their life. So it's a choice. They can choose it. I had a guy that was in a quadriplegic position from a surfing accident who was bolted into a wheelchair, kind of strapped into a wheelchair, bolts in his neck, and told he would never be able to pee or poo or walk or whatever. And he went on to build a surfboard that a person who's a quadriplegic can get on that automatically rights itself, engineered it, and got pushed into surfing and rode huge waves as a quadriplegic and developed and engineered a car that he could come in with his wheelchair and come in and drive with his mouth. And he went on to do something and became famous and worked with a guy that was the old Superman, that had the quadriplegic. They worked and created a foundation and trained quadriplegics on how to surf. So, you can make it yourself a victim and run the story and create that narrative, or you can do something else. I knew a guy that was burned. 80% of his body was burned. His face was burned. It's hard to even look at him. And he ended up marrying the hottest girl of the state in California, Miss California.
There we go.
So, because he basically, his perception was that this is on the way, not in the way. And he's resourceful. There's 7 great questions you want to ask yourself every day. What is it I would absolutely love to do in life? What is it I'd absolutely love to do in life? I want to travel the world and get handsomely paid to travel and do that and teach. How do I get handsomely and beautifully paid to do it? Because most people go, how can I afford to do what I love? And they get a job that makes some money, and then they go and escape the job and work, go on vacation and blow it. So they have a Monday morning blue, Wednesday hump days, thank God it's Fridays, and week friggin' ends, and then they end up blowing all their money on things they want to do instead of making money doing what they love to do. So you always ask, how do I do what I love and get handsomely and beautifully paid to it? The third question is, what is the highest priority actions I can do today to make myself move one step closer to that reality? How do I get there? What are the action steps? There's no way you can't get there if you keep asking that question. And the fourth one is, what obstacles might I run into and how do I solve in advance? And have foresight, not hindsight. Foresight and strategic planning takes you farther than any hindsight. Insight and foresight is better than blind sight and hindsight. So then you ask, what worked and what didn't work today? So you refine it. That's why I keep metrics. What worked, what didn't work today? Metrics to find out what is working and what's not working so you can refine your skills. And then how do I do it more effectively and efficiently tomorrow? And the last question is, no matter what happened today, no matter what happened, how did it get me one step closer to this objective? And don't stop till that answer is answered, until you see it on the way. So you don't have any regrets. You don't think, I screwed up here and all those amygdala-driven judgments of self because you didn't ask, how did it help get there? If you ask those 7 questions and live by priority, the sky's the limit on where you go. And I've been trying to teach people that all these years since the 80s, and I do my best and podcast
You're doing a great job.
seminars and try to get out there and reach people and hopefully make some sort of difference in the world. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Wow. And I know we're getting close to our time, but I do ask this question of every single guest. And you're probably the most qualified person to answer this, but you've worked with a lot of people, especially in performance, in business, in leadership. In your experience, in your opinion, what is the difference between the good and the great? Those people who are the top, 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 top in their field.
Uh, Jim Collins, in his Good to Great book,
Yeah.
outlined this. Good is a moral thing, polarized thing. Great is a magnitude. So when you're doing something, stop and think about this. No matter what you do, the consequences balance out by the central limit theorem. So no matter what you do, there's going to be some people that like and dislike it. You're going to have people liking and disliking and support and challenge you no matter what you do. That's why all blogs come back into center. And so if you think that you're going to do only good things and people are not going to ever dislike what you do, and you're addicted to being praised and you're afraid of being ridiculed, you're only going to grow to the level of ridicule you can endure. You can't make it to the top unless you're a hero and villain, a saint and sinner. you know and so good is a moral direction of polarity, and it's like trying to get a one-sided magnet. A magnet is, if you try to get a magnet and I say, I give you a magnet, I'll give you $1 billion if you can give me only one pull back. If you're an idiot, you try. You can't cut the magnet in half and give me a positive pull. It would give me a positive pull and a negative pull. So the pursuit of one and the pursuit of greatness, the greatness is the embracing of the pleasures and pains in the pursuit of something deeply meaningful and purposeful. Great is somebody is called to something of great magnitude, and who is not trying to just do one-sided things and worrying about what people think. Because otherwise you're going to be worried about what other people think and injecting values of others, and you can't reach your full potential subordinating to the outer authorities. You're either a follower of a culture, good, fitting in, or great, leading a culture. And if so, you'll be opposed, ridiculed, violently opposed, criticized by half the population. So how many people can you handle being upset with you? That'll be a determinant of what you can do. Because if you're not making some sort of difference, there's a spectrum of values across the planet. And it's like synonyms and antonyms. There's some people that believe this, they'll be the opposite. And there's a law called the law of heuristic escalation that unites them. As one escalates an ideology of promoting one, another ideology promoting the other, and they play in pairs of opposites. It's called the unity of opposites by Heraclitus. It's called the logos by Philo. And so the second you try to get a one-sided system and be good and not great, you'll automatically limit your potential, because you'll now be trying to fit in instead of stand out. You'll now try to appease instead of going out there and serve. So you have to be willing to take the shots and be the unborrowed visionary and be the one that people, Gandhi said first they ridicule you, then they violently oppose you, and then they try to eliminate you, and then they eventually realize that we all believe that. And you create a culture. And the people that are standing out there's a book called The Denial of Death, right? And this book, it shows what they call the conformity and the enormity, which is the collective hero and the individual hero. And I'm a real believer that if you're not walking an undivided path, that's a calling that you have, and doing what you really feel called to do, and knowing that there's going to be people that like and dislike it. If you can't handle that and keep a record, I keep metrics. If I do a show and I got people liking and disliking, and they're large numbers, great. I'm doing my job. I'm stirring it up. Because the people that I'm challenging are making them think. When maximum learning occurs at the border of support and challenge, what they call accommodation and assimilation. When things support your values, you assimilate it. When things challenge it, you accommodate to it. Maximum growth occurs at both of them. Maximum growth in human beings is when you're able to do something that other people are frightened to do, but you have the courage to do it. And the courage is one who follows their heart. Cora means coronary. Cora is heart. The person who's willing to open the heart and follow the heart is the person who's going to make the biggest difference. And they're going to stir up a nest, and they're going to be an unborrowed visionary, and they're going to end up creating something original. When I was speaking at the United Nations on innovation, I said that when you pursue challenges that inspire you, you create the greatest original thinking, innovation, and wake-up genius. And that means you're going to tackle things that other people are afraid to tackle and do things that other people. That's why Elon Musk is leading the field because he's tackling things that other people wouldn't even begin to tackle. He's not looking for an easy path. He's looking for the biggest challenges on the planet and how do we solve them. That's the person. When he does, he's going to pee off a lot of people. NASA ridiculed him when he started. Now they use his equipment to go to space.
Fascinating. Well, so this has been an absolute pleasure. And given the life and the career you've built, how how do you want to be remembered? I don't know if you care about that question.
I do. Seneca, the Roman poet, said, "You measure an individual by their most distant ends. And the magnitude of space and time in your innermost dominant thought will determine the level of conscious evolution you've attained." So, yeah, I keep a metric on the impact I try to make in the world. When I was 20 years old, I kept seeing Isaac Asimov's name everywhere. This was a science fiction writer and a scientist that was incredibly polymathic and a very ingenious guy. And everywhere I was picking up a book, there he was again. His name was in there all over the place. I thought, this guy's made a massive difference. So at 20, I wrote down a goal that I wanted to make enough of a difference and to have a metric that I'm making some of the difference by the number of books people reference me in. We broke the 800 mark. We're on our way for that 1,000. And I'd probably another 9 years. We're estimating 9 years I'll have that. So that was just a metric of a goal to know that we made some sort of contribution. I got another one this morning that came in. So, if you metric the difference you want to make, you can make a difference. Now, in the big scheme, a billion years from now, that's forgotten. But in the time frame that I live, at least it gives me something to strive for, something to make some sort of contribution in. And yes, but I think that your contribution is maximized to the degree of your congruency between your actions and your highest values. The more congruent you are, the higher the probability of leaving a mark. Why? Because every human being wants to be authentic and loved for who they are. And if you're doing it and exemplifying, as Einstein said, the greatest teacher is exemplification. If you exemplify that, you magnetize people, places, things, ideas, and events into your life to create what you love. And then you give people permission to do the same, and that creates a ripple effect. So I just figured that I'll live as congruently and as authentically as I possibly can, serving as many people as I can, as long as I can. That's the journey.
It's been a phenomenal 1 hour. It's I can spend another 6 days with you probably just talking. But Dr. John Demartini, thank you so much for your time. And I actually am going to sign up because I haven't done it yet. But one of your main products that you offer people to be able to at least experience what you talk about is the breakthrough experience. Is that right?
Yes, the breakthrough experience is my attempt to do what Paul Bragg did for me when I was 17 with as many people as I can. I've done it 1,266 times. And I just finished it in San Francisco. I do them, I've done them up to 43 times in 1 year, and I do them sometimes only 35, 40 times, but somewhere in that time a year. And it's 2 days, and what we do is we find out what it is you have as a dream, and we figure out what's in the way, and we just break through it. That's it. It's just designed to do whatever we can. I show people how to live congruently according to values, dissolve all the baggage that they've been accumulating that's interfering with that, and show them how to see things on the way so they can just keep moving forward towards their objectives, whether it be business or finance or health or any of the areas of life that people come in with all the different issues. I'm just interested in doing what I can and whatever resource I can to help them break through that and give them tools on how to do that. So
Fantastic.
that's the program that I love doing the most.
I will make sure we put that on the show notes. And this is actually, am I right in saying that there is a format that is in person as well as online?
I do them both.
Okay.
When I come into a city, like I was in Honolulu, I sailed into Honolulu a few weeks ago and I did one in Honolulu, and I sailed into San Diego, and then I went into LA. I do programs when I get to the cities, and then I do them when I'm out at sea. I just do them live from Zoom.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. Ladies, gents, thank you so much for being with us. And we've had the great pleasure of the great Dr. John Demartini. Thank you, guys. And thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you.